As we continue with week 5, step number 8 is about manifestation. If you've subscribed to my email newsletter, you'll know that I'm really into manifestation. So this step says, take a step back and see if the composition calls for additional applique, embroidery, or pleating. Give the quilt what it needs. This is the only step that I have a bit of an issue with how it was edited. Several of the other edits that were done to the pattern were huge improvements, but this one I also intended to give you the opportunity to add to the quilt something that you would like to manifest in your own life. So it's 2 very unique kinds of options. For the first option, the one that's written in the pattern, when I look at this quilt, to me, the balance, the rhythm, the focal point, it feels a bit off. It feels as though it's longing for something to happen in this area. And just from an aesthetic point of view, the quilt is saying to me, I need something here. By the time we've gotten this far into our quilt, it truly is a collaboration with the steps, with what I'm doing, with what you had on hand, with how you interpreted the pattern compared to how I interpreted it. And the quilt now has a mind of its own. It's its own thing, and it might say to you, I need something here. And you can respond and give it what it needs. And so that's one form of the manifestation that might be happening in the quilt. As we look at this variation that I've already completed, to me, just looking at the finished one versus unfinished, it feels more solid, more finished, more complete. It doesn't feel as though it's longing for something necessarily. And so that is something that we definitely want to satisfy with this step of the quilt. I want to also reassure you that at step 5, we're not done with the quilt yet. We have a lot of things yet that we still need to do, and that is going to happen in the quilting process. For example, you can notice that I've even done different kinds of quilting, different colors. We're going to get into all of that next week with things that you can add with the quilting. In terms of things that are being manifested, I want to show you very carefully an aspect of this quilt that you probably didn't get to see before. And so this is some embroidery that I did. You can see these 2 lines of white. They come down in this relatively empty looking area at a distance, so it draws you close because it looks a bit empty, unfinished here. But when you see it up close, there are things happening. So I've got this shape, and then it extends outward here. And so there's a line coming up. Once you've seen that and you pull back, you're able to understand that it's next to my body, and that almost looks like these rabbit ears for my nature step are like the legs of another person. And so what I was going for manifesting in this quilt was someone to hold hands with, essentially trying to manifest a partner or a companion for myself, which was a very heartfelt wish. And because it was so tender and important to me, I didn't really want it to be a super loud, super noticeable part of the quilt. I wanted it to be something that only the careful observer would be rewarded with that knowledge. So this is what I was trying to manifest. And I'll share with you that mere weeks after I made this quilt and embroidered this on here, I did indeed manifest the relationship that I was dreaming of, perhaps, and I've been dating someone for nearly 5 months. So take this block seriously. You might just get what you want. I also feel like now it's an opportunity for me to, on this new quilt, try to manifest something different since I've figured this one out. So I'm going to have to think pretty carefully about what I want to manifest going forward. It's kind of interesting and ironic to me that I've ended up with the same exact spot in the quilt that's looking a little bit empty. That mid-left area where I'm going to put my manifestation item. So you'll see if it turns out that way for you or if it turns out differently. But that's my next step. And I want to share with you the work of my friend Zach Foster. He did something pretty subtle as well. Zach wrote, "One of the things I really enjoyed about this quilt-along process was thinking about self-representation in fabric. I admittedly played a little fast and loose with the guidelines, and the key moment for me was the decision I made around the touch section. I gathered up my 5 objects, traced out their silhouettes, and began arranging them on my quilt. I tried a number of different placements, but they all seemed incongruent with the direction of the project. I found myself philosophically bucking at the idea of representing my identity through the objects in my life. I tried to live simply and consume as little as possible, and putting material stuff on my quilt just didn't seem like it accurately portrayed who I am. So I hid them by turning them into placeholders. Each item kept its actual height and width. It just got squared out and therefore de-identified. They were cut out of the same fabric as the background, obscuring them even further. I placed them in a marginal space down the right-hand side where you can still see their frayed edges if you look closely. In that way, I was able to make some peace with the role objects played in this portrait of me." Whatever it is that you and your quilt want to manifest, you've got several options for how to get it on the quilt. So one is embroidery, and you can see that this was embroidered with a very simple running stitch. So I did not do a back stitch or anything fancy. I just plowed right through the fabric, creating that dotted line. And I used that same technique that you learned about in the last step by mapping out my line with thread and then with applique needles. You could also applique a shape, just like we have been for most of the work in the quilt. Anything that you wanted to applique as something that you're trying to manifest is an option. You might also choose to pleat more shapes into your quilt, or you could pleat a piece of fabric and then applique that pleated piece onto the quilt itself. So consider maybe if one of those techniques feels right, if that's what the quilt is longing for, and also consider how you can best visualize the thing that you would like to invite into your life. When it comes to asking for what I want, I tend to ask in a very quiet, very soft, subtle voice, much like my manifestation block on my first quilt. The second quilt that I'm making with this same pattern has been an opportunity for me to choose the opposite and do the opposite in many ways. And I thought it would be appropriate to do the opposite for this manifestation block as well. Therefore, I've chosen to embroider with a backstitch, and I embroidered something that is, for me, very directly representing the thing that I want and that I'm trying to manifest, so that it's not at all ambiguous. I was reviewing the objects that I traced in an earlier step and noticed that the connection between my thermometer, elderberries, warm water, my pillow, and the oil that I use to care for my face, the connection is that they're all healthcare things, that I make a big effort to nurture my quality of sleep, and everything else on there is very direct desire to improve my health. I also think that if that's my microcosm of things I was working on and thinking about recently, that now in the macrocosm of the current health environment and crisis that's happening around the world, health is very much on the minds of everyone, and it's on my mind in a new and different way, in addition to these long-term health goals that I've been working on. Therefore, I chose to direct my efforts in my embroidery on manifesting good health. Here, with very little ambiguity, then, are 2 lines that I have added. I am in a state of vibrant good health, said, phrased as though it's in the present, as though it's something that I already have, something that I believe I can have. And then I was also scrolling through Instagram in the middle of today and saw a beautiful quote. I'll tag her in the comments, from someone who I follow who's been making these lovely "Be Gentle with Yourself" stencils out of sand. So this is an embroidery from The Little Prince, looking at this circle like moon. It reminded me of The Little Prince's planet, and especially being called an orbit block in general made me think a little bit about the planet and that wish for myself and also wish for others. So there's, in yoga, because I'm a yoga teacher, there's a beautiful metta meditation that I like to practice, which says, may all beings be safe, may all beings be happy, may all beings be healthy, may all beings be free. And in a metta meditation, that which we wish for ourselves, we wish for all people. And just this global view of that is a reminder to me of how big that wish is and how much I want to manifest it. And as we look back, that's my whole quilt, totally done piecing it. And as we come over here, this is my first variation of the quilt. And again, you can see that very soft, subtle voice that I used when manifesting. I had this first manifestation goal in a subtle way in mind throughout this quilt as well, because certainly maintaining my relationship and showing up as a good partner is something I want to continue to manifest. And so that's been infused in this quilt, in particular with this pair of birds, with this pair of bunny tracks, although I think he has a very different spirit animal from mine. But that energy is definitely present. Even just this scene of a couple, they're fishing together is what's happening there. And all done piecing. Notice that it's not completely full or finished, and we want to leave space for the quilting to be exciting and interesting. Here is a very important note that I wanted to share with you, eye to eye, face to face. Manifesting can be very emotional. Sometimes we can feel so full of wants, and sometimes those wants can be very tender and challenging to deal with. For me, what I manifested with this quilt and what I'm working towards, and there's perhaps a lot in here that I don't yet have, but that I am on my way towards. For me, a lot of times the things that I have wanted to manifest in the past are things that appear very easy for other people to have, and yet for me, I try, and feel like I don't have them and can't have them. And that can be a very defeating feeling. So whether it is this time around with my health, or with relationships, or with any other subject that might be for you. I know sometimes it's so nice to have a girlfriend who is into opposite issues when I have a good conversation with a friend. And so sometimes it can be a work problem or a personal fulfillment difficulty. And it's amazing how they talk about this in Vedic astrology as well, that the same thing might come up over and over and over for each person. And so for me, I have my own specific set of reoccurring challenges that are different and unique from other people. But no matter what it is, if you are working on manifesting something, you will need to make sure that you are being clear. So you do not want the thing that you're embroidering or working on manifesting to be ambiguous or at all uncertain. Even though I said mine in this quilt with a quiet voice, I was very clear about what I wanted. It was not, oh, maybe this, maybe that, maybe I'll settle for this other thing, maybe I can't get what I want, so what else can I take? I was clear about what I wanted, and I was specific. And with my words this time around, I also think that I was very clear and very specific, and that's important when you're manifesting. It's important that you say the thing that you do want, and that you never mention the things that you don't want, the things that you're trying to get rid of, the negative phrasing of the thing that you don't want. So please make sure that you are being clear, and also please be gentle with your heart, because it might take 7 years, it might take 2 decades, it might be your life's work, the thing that you're trying to manifest. You are meant to want that thing, and working towards it is a beautiful, beautiful thing. There's so much more about it in my newsletter that I wrote, and if you go on Instagram to my link in my profile, there's a link tree, and you can find my past newsletters and see that one. It's from just a couple months ago. And be gentle with yourself, because sometimes with the things we want, they're really big and really hard to get around our limiting beliefs about that thing, because it's been a challenge for so long. We wouldn't want it. It wouldn't be at the top of our list of things to manifest if it was easy. That would be, wouldn't make sense to choose. So be gentle, and just express what it is that you want. You're just trying to be clear and let the universe know, this is what I want. And also make sure you're honoring what the quilt wants. Let it speak to you, and let it inform as well what you add on this step, because it might have some surprises in store for you as well. Thank you guys so much.